The Chief, let's start.
Welcome, everyone. We are grateful for joining in this maiden seminar of the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation. And I believe each of us will gain something reasonable, as our presentation of data is something universal to every profession, whether you're in the industry or the academia, or you're in the banking sector, is something everyone does daily. So hopefully we'll be able to gain something useful. Just about the presenter happens to be the founder of the Zeribe Nwosu Foundation. So we found it very, very, very important that he makes the maiden seminar presentation so that he will be able to emphasize at the end what this foundation is all about, how he plans to run it to make it successful and also to impact lives, possibly globally and particularly in African continent. So yeah, Zeribe, go on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, nice introduction and brief one. So my name is Zeribe Nwosu, as my friend nicely introduced me. Today we will discuss preparing and presenting research data. But this is something that applies across borders, as you also mentioned, not just for research, but even in other contexts we will see in a bit. Right, so the one thing I will change though is he said that I will talk about this in the end. I somehow flipped this to the front, so I have played him a bit of a trick. So the whole idea of the foundation, as I envisage it, is to promote education, teaching, research, and supervision. This is something I'm already doing in some capacity, but I just think that that effort can also be spread, to reach out to more people, especially if we can use these virtual communication networks and softwares. So we want to have seminars and workshops, teach people some certain skills, and identify areas that I think we have limited training or limited knowledge. And one of which is, frankly speaking, how to assemble and how to present your data. So that's one of the reasons why we're here today. So, but besides that, I'm very interested in mentorship, also based on my personal experience. I've traveled to several countries, learned a lot along the way, both positive and negative. And I feel that that is a very useful resource, huge resource to transfer to someone, to help someone to not make some certain mistakes that I have made on one hand, but also to help them to improve their chances of succeeding on the other hand. One other thing I also want to be doing through this network, this foundation, is, if we have these seminars and people are participating and all of that, I can, over time, build some sort of relationship with them. And many times, many students are looking for someone to give them a recommendation letter. I can support those students because maybe I have got to know them, I have got to know their potential, then I can vouch for them, and that hopefully increases their chances of getting a position. And then, of course, is a scholarship. We advertised a scholarship in January this year, and we're going to be advertising that almost every year going forward. It's going to be shifting sometimes from master's scholarship to undergraduate scholarship, or to high schools, to university scholarship, sometimes partial, sometimes maybe full. The goal is to support someone, give someone an opportunity to be able to, pursue their future career dreams. And so also another thing I'm interested in, although this is not necessarily the key focus of the foundation, is philanthropy. I am interested in helping people. If sometimes you go to the village, you see an old man or an old woman, and you say, "Mama or Papa, how are you?" And then he or she is telling you that they have been in pain for, I don't know, several months, sometimes even a year, and you ask what is the problem. There is no money to buy medication. You ask how much is that? They tell you it's 1,000 naira or 2,000 naira. And you do your maths, that's just falling like $4 or $5. And so somebody can be in pain for so long. And so that kind of thing, if I see it, especially from my own village and community, I really want to be able to interfere and support such people. But overall, the foundation is focused on sharing knowledge that I believe could help someone. Right. So far we're still in the process of building things out, or assembling a team of very talented people to help us move things forward. You have seen already my friend who introduced me earlier on, Dr. Ezokbai. So he is a lecturer at Coventry University, and now actually is transitioning to the Montfort University. We were classmates in undergraduate, a very fantastic guy, graduated the best in microbiology units. I graduated the best in clinical chemistry. And overall, I have to make that point. But he's a fantastic person, an interesting person to work with. He is supremely passionate about scholarship and mentorship. And I really want to, tap into his experience and wisdom to build the scholarship ideologies of this foundation. And I have another friend of mine that I have recruited here, Jologo Korea. We were classmates in the secondary school, one of the most intelligent persons I ever met, fantastic person. He is very committed, to training kids, children on physics and teaching them physics and mathematics. And so I thought that the scholarship, the aspect of the scholarship that is going to focus on secondary school to university, he will be very well positioned to help us to facilitate that scholarship, to coordinate that scholarship initiative. Then I was recently introduced to this young man, or this young man, I got to know about him, Charles Segede Ugu, and he got first class in medical lab science, the same department that myself and I came from. And this is a fantastic achievement. It's a very strong candidate. And I think we are both immediately adopting him as a mentee. And we're looking to support him in any way we possibly can to make sure that he achieves his dreams with what he has already achieved. So he's going to be volunteering with the foundation and helping us with research activities if there are things we need to pursue along that line. Then I also recently was introduced to a young man, Akintunde Odesilo. So this guy studied computer science at Newcastle University for his bachelor's and master's, and he went back to Nigeria and served. He's working in Nigeria as a very patriotic Nigerian. I think it's very, very good, that people are also able to go home and support directly in person. So that is very great. And so I talked to him at once, and it was clear that he found this quite interesting. And so he's going to be working with us with website and communication things, and particularly to help us to make the online examination aspect of the scholarship that we're planning for next year feasible. And I know that if I show this, and just, I actually intentionally did not want to put my face here, because if I have my face here, then it's like 5 guys, and everybody saying, where are the ladies? I don't want people to start logging out, and this is not just an all men's affair. So far, I have not gotten, there's a provision to include at least 2 ladies here, but there's no limit. So long as somebody is interested and committed and is willing to support us and can spare us our time, however little, we're willing to work with that person. We want somebody that is supremely talented and is interested in helping other people. So if you know anybody you would recommend to fill these gaps, feel free to share that person's contact with me. And if you feel like you're that person, just feel free to contact me, and I'm happy to interact with you. But those people are going to be in charge of communication and planning for the foundation. So I guess that's just about the introduction of what we are planning to do and how we want to move about that. The rest of the stuff we have already sent a Telegram link, and we'll be, of course, communicating through other means. And so it will be easy for you to follow what we are doing. But what we are here today to discuss is data preparation and presentation. I just want to share with you just a handful of tips of what I learned over time of how you can assemble your data and prepare it in a way that gives credibility to your work, and in a way that makes your audience very excited, very engaged, and willing to listen to you. So these are some of the topics that I'm going to cover today, and it's already on the screen, so I don't want to read them all throughout. But in case someone will just be listening on the audio, we want to talk about the importance of data preparation and presentation. Then we're going to talk about making effective presentation. We got to get to questions and answers, and if there is enough time, we will do some networking. Otherwise, we can carry that over in social media. All right. That said, let us look at why data collection and presentation is important. So there are several myriads of reasons, some of which Dr. Ezokbai had mentioned earlier on. But I think that the most important reason why we go to look for data is because we want to learn, we want to get an information. We want to stimulate further research, we want to learn something and use that to further ask additional questions. Then we also want to guide personal decision. Sometimes, for example, you might be spending too much money and you can assemble, take a note of how much you're spending on monthly basis and you feel like, okay, from next month, I want to cut that expenditure and then I will spend less. Without you knowing it, you are actually playing, you already have data in your hand and you are using that data to inform your decision. So that's why this is so important. Then you can also use data to influence others. One of the very powerful examples in that direction is, for example, these companies, I would say, like Facebook, that we're all signed up to it, feel like it's free. You're saying, oh, you don't pay anything to belong to Facebook. But your data is critical, your location, the kind of thing you search, the kind of, the message you post is very critical for them to determine what kind of advertisements they can forward to you. And they have like 2 billion users. So if they send targeted advertisement to all these people, even if it's 100,000 people that get to spend money in a day or on 2 days, that's a lot of money for the company. So they don't need your money in the end. So you can use the data you generate to sort of influence how people react or even maybe even spend money. So governments use data to define their policy. We know with coronavirus, incidence is going high. We are told to wear masks. So then if you look at where do we need to present data? Sometimes you need to actually present data to yourself to see, okay, this is what I have observed. When I take my time and collect my data and package it, this is what the pattern looks like, and this is what I have to do. In academic setting, which is what most of us are familiar with, as part of your bachelor's, you have to give seminar presentation, you have to give progress reports, they are all data, and then you have to do your thesis defense. That is true for masters, that is true for PhD, and also for postdoctoral studies to a large extent. This is not very common in Nigeria, but in most other countries, or at least the major countries that I have been to, job interviews and scholarship interviews, you have to give a presentation. So it is important that you understand your data. And usually these presentations are like 15 minutes or 10 minutes, or even in some instances, 5 minutes. So it's absolutely critical that you know what you want to say and you deliver it in a timely fashion. So data presentation then becomes a tool in this instance for even securing a job, right? I think why you give the presentation for your job position, I did the same for the position that I have. So it is a routine. Engineers and construction companies, for example, when they want to build bridges, they send their bids to government and they are invited to give a presentation. So they have to demonstrate that they have the tools, they have the manpower, they have the resources to lead that project from beginning to the end. So, and that's also by extension, I should go then to government that need this data to inform what they do. All right, so what are the sources of data? Therefore, I think anywhere and from anything. It just depends on your mindset. If you set your mind towards making that a source of data. For example, in a hospital, we have the clinical departments, where a patient comes in, the doctors and the nurses are measuring temperature, they're measuring patient's weight, they're taking information about the patient's age, demographics, Abia state or Imo state, Nigerian or German or American. These information are by themselves data, because you can by extension begin to ask whether there's a difference between what is happening in someone from Abia state versus someone from Imo state, or from someone in Nigeria versus someone from China or from America. So the mere fact that we are from different countries is a source of data. It's already by itself a data. All right, so you can use all of these instruments to generate data in the hospital setting. You can, on individual basis, also collect data, body weight, activities, sports. I think some people have this kind of watch that allows them to get an insight into their pulse, their temperature, and all of that. And that you can use to inform whether you want to do more activity or less activity. In epidemiological and field studies, we collect data where you're buying and selling. I mentioned this earlier on. somehow you can, by extension, say I'm spending more money, on this product and I'm selling less, and therefore I want to sort of, balance my expenditure versus my profit or income. So you can, in principle, source data from anything. For example, also just to mention the last part of this now, the sign-up sheet that we use today, I have used that to generate some interesting data. Actually, just 1 hour before we started, there were about 97 responses, which is impressive. And we have, distribution from undergraduates, we have from the PhD, and the PhD students, etc., etc. So you see that even that form already now becomes a source of data that somebody can use to inform a decision. For example, I can say that, and I would like to see, since these are mostly undergraduates, bachelor's holders, I like to see that in the next 50 years, that all of these are PhD holders, right? And then you can think about how you want to plan that to make it happen in the next 50 years. So data source correlates them with data utility, and then hopefully results. All right, so I just want to hit on some very critical factors that I think a lot of students falter on, but it's very important. Number one, data collection, a key factor you need to consider is need. So we don't collect data at random. Like people, you just, for example, as a student, you have a particular timeline, you want to finish your project and you want to leave. So you don't go, so you are not a biomedical scientist, and then you go and start collecting data about engineering, or you start collecting data about soil, let's say porosity or something like that. So you collect data that is necessary for you to finish a particular and get a particular set of information. In this case, that you need to finish your thesis. All right, it could be for a research purpose that you want to now say you want to compare countries. You want to look at incidence of coronavirus. I'm going to making reference to coronavirus because we are in the coronavirus time. It could be that you want to see clinical data, correlate that with the incidence of coronavirus. You want to see, for example, are people who have high blood pressure having high also coronavirus, something like that. Anything can be a need to really carefully seek data and use it. Of course, you can do clinical versus laboratory data analysis. You want to see whether there is a correlation between blood pressure, for example, and blood volume or group or sugar, and etc., etc. So again, it's all governed by the need. The other part, and this is perhaps actually the most important for students, data availability. Keep in mind that if there is no data, there is no research. And this has to be determined from the beginning. I have seen many times that students start a project without arrangement or without any very clear strategy on how the data is going to come. Especially, I'm talking about now medical laboratory scientists, as I mentioned in that, but I'm going to be referring a little bit more to medical lab scientists. You start a project, you need patients for this data, for this study, and you are starting from January 2021 with the projected number of patients that you want to collect as 100. And already this is the end of June, you are having 18 patients. At this point in time, you have to do your maths and see that 18 means you're getting an average of 3 patients per month. If you're getting 3 patients per month, what then gives you the confidence that you are going to hit 100 by December? The only exception is if you are collecting a patient cohort that you know that for some reason there is a high likelihood that you get them around December time. For example, if it's something like a patient that, let's say something like asthma, that you think that maybe during the winter season or Hamatan, when there is dust, that you are likely to get more patients, then you can say, okay, that you can wait. Otherwise, at the end of June, you are having 18 samples. You only can calculate and estimate that you will have a maximum of 36 samples by the end of the year. That is the best estimate you should do. And then begin to calculate and work with that. If necessary, adjust the project. So, but sitting down and hoping that somehow you're going to reach 100 when you are just only at 18 at the end of June is really it's not good for your work. And what happens is many students at the end of that time now realize that indeed they could not reach that target. They then begin to run around and there's confusion everywhere. And this is something we really want to avoid. Okay, collaboration is key in collecting data. This is a language that is very uncommon in Nigeria, and it's sad. There is no interaction between laboratory scientists, for example, if I want to give a rough example, or very limited interaction between those at ESUT in Park Lane and those at University of Nigeria Enugu campus, Itukwuozara, for example. And I'm talking about just some 30 minutes, 35 minutes drive if the road is very good. The distance is short, so why can't people work together to build something and to generate knowledge that we can use to advance research, at least in that region? So collaboration is key. Instead of you sitting down waiting for you to collect all your data in one particular unit, you can reach out to people in other units or other hospitals and build a network and then expand your data pool so that your study can move ahead. Then ethical consent. If you need ethical consent for your studies, then try to make sure that you secure that very early on. Don't go ahead and buy reagents and start analysis and then do everything only to realize that, oh, because of ethical consent, you really cannot use this data. So fix this problem very early on so that you will not have problem later on. Then of course, you need to think about the audience and the format you want to have your presentation. So if it is something that you are going to present as sort of thesis, it's something that you have to present orally. If it's something that you're just presenting, for progress report and it's not going beyond that, that can also impact how much data you want to collect and how much time you should spend. So it might be that you only just need a pilot study, a handful of patients to do your get an insight into what you may have to focus on later on. So that can influence how you collect your data. Then one other thing I want to point out, which I see a lot in African journals, and I'm going to show some examples later on, is a paper will just come out and use exactly one format of data throughout. Like you can use only table and and present everything as table and or pie chart or bar chart, just one format, and that doesn't provide room for spice to how you present your data. Right. So if there are multiple, if I see table here, table here, table here, table here, or maybe even I'll say table, and then also we have table maybe here, 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 it will be difficult for me to sit down and begin to drill all of these numbers table by table. But if I see that this is a table and I see that this is a pie chart, each of them will get equal attention because I feel like they're going to be different set of information. Unless if I am proven wrong by virtue of studying the pie chart and then I realize that, oh, that is the same information that you already have in the table. But even at that, you have achieved one goal. You have made me to pay attention to the pie chart with the greater detail, right? So it is important to mix the format you use to present your data up a little bit. Don't be monotonous in using exactly one thing across board. And I'm going to show you an example of some of that, as I mentioned earlier in a bit. So the other thing I want to point out also are tools that you can use to display your data or analyze your data. I'm going to be doing a demo with Microsoft Excel because I think almost everybody, especially those in Nigeria, have just Excel. But you have also SPSS, statistical package for the social sciences. This is a very commonly used tool actually in Nigeria. I remember several years ago, I believe it's somehow also like that now. You have GraphPad. This is commercially available. I'm not sure whether it's so common in Nigeria, but if you have the data and plug it into your GraphPad, you very easily can plot, have the figures plotted out for you, and you will just, process that and get a better visualization of your data. MATLAB, you can use Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop. We're going to share a little bit of Illustrator you can use to clean up your data. There are a lot of some free tools also you can use to display your data. For example, R, Python. These are freely available. If you learn how to use them, it makes you extremely capable of controlling how you visualize your data, and you have enormous options to show your data in the most beautiful way. Then you have Inkscape, which is an alternative, is a free alternative to Illustrator. Maybe not totally producing the same feature you have in Illustrator, but it will do most of the job. You can also use it to clean up your data. Then we have GIMP, a GNU image manipulation program. This is also similar to Photoshop, Then this program I saw online actually is you can just use it online. You don't need to even download it. You can use it online and have exactly or about the same output you will have with Photoshop. So I encourage people to access this. ImageJ, for example, a lot of people already know you can use it to clean up your figure and make it look nice. So it is important to find also how to synergize and use these tools to prepare your results. Some of you should be learning them, but we are going to be with time, teaching some of these. For example, R has like 10,000 packages in it. It's enough to keep us busy from now to the next 20 years if we want to. So we cannot learn it in one go, but we will systematically learn some packages and that people can find useful for different applications. Now, the one point I want to drive home here, because I think that this is really killing the quality and integrity of research from sub-Saharan Africa, is image quality. If you have worked also hard to generate your data from all means, you really want to make sure that the preparation of the data does not then let down the effort you have invested, right? So image quality, when it is poor, can undermine the integrity of your data. For example, now this one study, they presented their results in 3 tables, table 1, table 2, table 3, and that was it for this study. Here we have compiled the demographics of their responders, and you have 403 patients. And they want to sort of maybe show that, there are people from Hausa, there are people from Igbo, and there are people from Yorubas that participated in the study, which is good, right? But now see what happens. How many patients, how many individuals from Hausa joined the study? 2, 0.5%. And how many people from Igbo joined the study? 6, 1.5%. These numbers do not tell us this is infinitesimal. It doesn't really, frankly speaking, this doesn't help the study. Okay. So, but here I think, of course, that is one thing that needs to be improved. But there are other things we can also take care of. For example, if you look at this other table, there is only one data point that is significant, that is age. So you can just take this and make it as pie chart or bar graph, help people to focus on the most important data. Now, the second study is this one. They have done some micrographs and staining. And here it is difficult to tell what is going on here. But I will just tell you some problems that I see. First of all, the tests here are so small, you need the binoculars to be able to see them. Secondly, some of these arrows, I don't know why they are of different colors. But even if they're explained in legend, it's difficult to understand why they have to be. And then you have different kinds of abbreviations. The fonts that are used here, some, for example, like this E is very difficult to see. For some, will be difficult for some people to see. So all of this then make it very hard for you a lot of you in Nigeria, when you're putting together your studies and you want to publish this in very good journals, you submit it and they reject it. And you are wondering every time, why is it that when you submit your work, your work is never going through any journal, apart from these African journals? I think that this is one of the problems. This is my diagnosis. The way you put together the results is key. Even though I can vouch for results that are coming from Africa in terms of the quality, because we have been using those data to treat patients for a long time, and so the quality is there. It is just a problem of packaging of the data. And that's one of the reasons why this presentation is key today. All right, in this instance, we can improve a lot of things. Alignment, for example, alignment here looks good, everything is in shape, but this one is a little bit shifted, and this one is even far more shifted. The font sizes, as I mentioned before, these fonts are so small, you can increase them. And then the font colors, you can harmonize the colors, and there's no point to make them. And if you want to even use 2 colors, then you use 2 colors, and we know. And then there's no point to have some bold and some light. These things are distractions. You want to avoid them. And then also, you can make these arrows maybe bigger or also of the same size. There's no reason why some arrows should be longer, even though it's just, it's not doing a point in anything so special. By the way, there is also no reason, as I mentioned earlier on, why the arrows should have different colors. That's something we should almost always keep in mind. Then another one, here, it is difficult to see what is, you need the binoculars to be able to see what is going on here. Also, I zoomed in like 400% to be able to see that this is 13.5. And so this is very hard to see. And there is no reason to prepare a figure like this, because with Excel, you can, I will show you in a bit, you can make a very nice figure just with Excel alone. So it's not a matter of the software, that you need a sophisticated software that you cannot pay for because there is no fund or something. It's just a matter of people maybe not being aware of what they can be doing to make their work look nicer. So here are many problems. I'm going to highlight them in a bit. For example, we don't need these patterns here. Even if you have to use a pattern, you can maybe just use the pattern only in this box. Everywhere else, you don't need a pattern, right? Improve the resolution of this image. And there are many ways you can do that. I can demonstrate that if time allows. But also improve the legend. So put something here to explain to us what is going on. So just writing figure 2 and don't mentioning the title is interesting, but it's not sufficiently informative. But also you can use fewer tests. Look at each of these legend descriptions here, actually are almost a sentence. And after very careful analysis of this whole thing, I realized that it's just actually 5 keywords that would have summarized everything. Number one, these are patients that we are told to go for counseling. These are those that we are told to go for exercise if they're depressed. These are those that we are told to meditate if they're depressed. These are those that we are told to pray, and those they were told to take medication. So they were comparing this, how these things impact their output after in the depression setting. So it would have been very simple and easy to understand this figure if they use just keywords: counseling, exercise, meditate, pray, and medication. So I'm just showing you now some of the reasons why we are having problems, communicating our findings from Africa to other parts of the world. And this is something that must change. Okay, and the next one I use now, this last figure. There's not so much that is bad about this figure, this particular presentation here, except that I would, on a personal test basis, I wouldn't want to use bar chart, and bar chart to show a result. But maybe the one thing that is a little bit confusing, it is not clear why we now went from blue here and blue here, and then all of a sudden we are going to black. It is not clear to me why that is the case. The figure legends are incomplete. It's in effect, they probably treated these rats with zinc and linoleic acid, understandably, or the combination. We don't know what the concentration of zinc they used is. We don't know, or linoleic acid. We don't know how long this treatment was. Was it for 1 month? Was it for 1 week? Was it for 1 year? It is not clear. So, and of course, also tiny things about the font to take care of. So take care of the font size so that people can see and appreciate the data. Improve the legend, put vital information as I mentioned here, and keep the color consistent, or explain why you have a change, why you have to go from blue for the same vehicle, the same setting, and then all of a sudden we now have black here. So that is something to keep in mind. Again, some of these things I'm pointing out are even mistakes some of us have made, including myself at some point in my career or studies, even particularly in the very beginning of my PhD or during my master's. So but the point we're making, where I'm highlighting this today, is that for way too long we have operated the system of the same mistake one person made, everybody wants to go and make exactly the same mistake, and therefore we don't grow. So we can change that narrative by learning from each other and improving on what the other person knows, so that we can grow as a people. All right, so that's why I'm highlighting this. All right, so let's just do a very quick demo with Microsoft Excel, and so that people can also get a sense of how actually they can, with the tool that they have in their computer. And so I'm targeting this more to those in Nigeria, but again, this can be everybody can benefit from this. With the tools you have in front of you, you can already prepare some pretty good figures for your studies and thesis. I have already prepared this and done this demo and have the results. So this is the result that I want to show here, but I will demonstrate how I came to this so that people will be able to at least try that in their own work. So I have a randomly compiled piece of data. For demonstration purpose, it's easier for me to do this, and that's what I'm showing you in a bit now. All right. So I have randomly just said, I have bachelors, people who have bachelors or masters or have PhD, and these are a number of individuals that fit into each of them, and not just a student. Actually, this was where we were, the number of participants we had as at 2 days ago or so when I was doing this, preparing for this. All right, so if you want to just do a pie chart, as I already showed before, if you want to do a pie chart, what you basically can do here is there's a place here where it says insert. You can come to this place and select this insert. It's very simple, very, very simple. You can select this pie chart here that you have here. And I want to go for 3-dimensional because I have a 3-dimensional pie chart here. I'm just trying to reproduce now this figure that I have in this place. So I'm going to move this a little bit like this so that we can see what I'm doing very well. All right, so that's the first step. I have selected this. I think I want to have some percentage here, and then I will, and then in the end, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Great. So I want to see that each of these is reflecting both the, the conditions. In this case, would be the students, bachelor's, PhD, but also the percentage as a fraction of the whole. Then anyway, and we have that. You can see that this font size is pretty small. You want to work on that as well because you want to give consideration to some of your audience who may have difficulty with vision. We're going to touch on that later on during talking about presentation. So you can increase the font size here. There is no limit. You just want to keep it moderate. And the font size, I think, now looks a little bit bigger. And now you can even increase the size of this image so that it's easy to see. And then you begin to see if there are things, you ask yourself, are there potential distractions here? One potential distraction I can see is this shadow here. We don't need the shadow, and maybe in some cases it's necessary, but right now we don't need it. You can come to this place and take out the shadow. This now looks good, all right? Then we don't have a title. I can just put a title here. So we want to say that this is educational level. Okay, we say N, we had 43. Now one problem here is for some reason, the way this is built, the code is written for this particular pie chart, this can only be in capital letter. So, but you see that I have it in small letter here. So that's something I will show you how I dealt with that. Anyway, there is a line surrounding this that I don't like to have. I'm going to take this line out. So I'll just click on this and say line, no borders. Yeah, to borders, no borders, and then that is gone. Okay. Now, what I did here was also to include a particular, because I wanted to just highlight who are the actual number of students rather than percentage. That's another thing you need to take into account. When you show a pie chart like this, you realize that some of your audience will not, if it's in a presentation, will not immediately begin to do the maths. You easily do the maths. What percentage now of 43, what actual number does 8% of 43 translate to? And even if they have to do that, by the time they bring out their phone and finish, you have already moved to the next slide. So you have lost them, you have distracted them. So if necessary, provide that information for each of these so that at a glance, people can see exactly what information you want to show them. All right, so I'm not going to go in and put that information here because I know that any of these will be corrupt when I go to Illustrator. So one of the things you can do, you can combine two tools to visualize your data in a lot better way. But actually, I think one thing I need to do here is to change the color of this. So you can double click on this and then come to this place. There's a place here you can just select, and then we have exactly the same thing that I have here. Okay, that now looks good in my eyes at least. I want to believe that that is true for many of you. Now, right, as I mentioned earlier on, you can prepare your figure in one software or one program and use another program to clean it up. And in fact, that's why what some of these very high-end journals use, like Nature, they prepare figures in maybe GraphPad or whatever. Then you move it to something like Illustrator and take your time and tidy that figure up. So it's not always the same tool that is used to prepare the figure originally that is what ends up in your final output, what you see in the papers. But anyway, so we can copy this now, and I will show you example of what I mean. If I copy this now and paste it, I already prepared this before, so just never mind. If I copy that now and paste it into Illustrator, look at what is going to happen. I assume that people are still seeing my screen, right? So if you come to this place now, you can see that the tests that I had here before, that I had in Excel, are all gone, right? They've been messed up. And this is also one of the things you need to keep in mind. When you prepare your figures and you're sending it to someone, you need to make sure that you're using text and fonts that when they are seeing it, it will not come out like this. because otherwise, you think you have done a good job, you send it out, and they are seeing something that is very broad. If it's something like a grant, they don't have enough time to call you on the phone to ask you to send another figure. They make a decision that, this is a poor quality grant application, So that is something to keep in mind. All right, so when you have this now here, you can take your time and then write in those things that I have, shown earlier on in that other, what do you call it, pie chart. Okay, so this educational level is written in, and then you can go on and write in student level. I permit me to not spend too much time on this because I think the key point is already made and I already prepared the other figure. But anyway, for righteousness sake, I'm just going to do this now. So 28%, and then I give number n equals to 12, right? So this information is now well captured here. Right, so I'm just going to stop on that one for one reason. I want to just show you one thing that we can then do, because you see the colors here are not the same, right? So first of all, we need to take this out, and then after that, we come back to having this test that is of different color. So there's a place here where you can just simply take this, and then so first of all, you need to select what you want to change, and that is this, and then you just take this eyedropper, they call it, and then you see that the color has not changed almost according to the color of that box, but it's not necessarily that clear. So what I can do is to then go to this place and decrease then the intensity of that color. Then it looks nicer, right? So this is how I came to preparing that figure that you have, that I showed you in the PowerPoint. So when you finish all of this, the one thing I want to show you here is that when you finish all of this now, you can just come to this place, say you want to export it. And if you say you want to export, it says export as, and then you can select here that you want to export it as a PNG, for example, or as a TIFF. You have all the possible options that you can format, that you can have your presentation exported as, your figure exported as. And then when we select, let's say PNG, we get the option to increase the resolution if we want. So we can make this super high. It's already in 300 pixels per inch, and we might want to increase that to 600 if you want. And then we have supremely high quality image that if you put it in those African journals, it will look almost like what you have in the best of the Western journals. So this is a critical aspect, and I will stop back here in terms of this demonstration. So, but for the purpose of then moving this to a PowerPoint, and after exporting, you can just then copy it and paste it to your PowerPoint for your presentation. So let's just assume that we have done that right now for this. So there's another figure that we had there, and that is this one. And here I have also just randomly, I'm going to delete this in the meantime. We have randomly assigned two body temperatures measurements for people who have, let's say for two students who have bachelor's degree or PhD or master's or PhD. And then what I like to do, and that's what I encourage you to do. So let us assume that this is my original data. So you have done this epidemiological study or whatever it is, and went to different states and collected their data. What you want to do now is to make sure that you have a backup of the original data so that you are not playing with that one. So let us assume that this is my backup. You have it somewhere, you can duplicate it and then begin to play with this one and use this to prepare your figures. If something goes wrong, you can go back to the original data, right? But if something goes wrong with the original data, and after you have gone to Calabar, you have gone to Abuja, you have gone to Lagos, you have gone to Port Harcourt to assemble data, then you will have to go back to those places again to reconcile those data. And that is a lot of time for you, it's money, and then it's maybe even counterproductive to do that, right? So always back up your data, always. Now let us say that we have done that, it's the backup data. What we want to do is to select these groups that we want to show on our x-axis, and then we select, we have calculated our mean, and then we have calculated our mean for each of these here. And by the way, let me just show that in case if somebody is wondering how the mean is calculated. So there's a function that's built in Excel here. If you click here, you have a range of, let me take all of this out, because these tiny things, actually a lot of people just don't even know they exist, right? So if you come to this place, there's a function here. If you come here, you have a whole lot of statistics you can already do in Excel. So much, there's so much even in Excel that we've got to sit down to learn it. It's probably going to take us another 3 years. And I'm not even talking, that's why I said for R, for example, when I said 20 years or so, I wasn't underestimating. Really, it's a lot in here. But anyway, let's say we want to calculate our mean. We just say here average, and that's it. And we can select these two columns, and we have the number that we have here. So I just wanted to show people how we came to that. And then you can drag that out across. But anyway, now we select the conditions we want to show on the x-axis, and then we select our numbers that we want to show on the y-axis. In other words, the measurements that we did. And again, we can just simply come to insert, and then we see here graphs where we can just select the dimensional column graph. Now we have the first step. This is not looking like what I have here, right? So this is the figure we have in front of us, but we're going to get there, okay? So the first thing, you can choose where you want to start. Maybe I can just start with removing the line because I don't like them. All right, so the lines are gone. Okay, next, I want to increase the font size because again, as we said earlier on, we need to consider that not everybody has equal level of equal efficiency of vision, if you like to put it that way. And therefore, it is important that we make sure that we take everybody into consideration. So we can increase the font size here, and then maybe even drag this, make it a little bit bigger so that it's easier for everybody to see. All right, next, this figure is interesting, but it's not telling us anything. We want to make it informative on its own. So we are measuring, assessing educational level. If you want to put that information up here so that we know. And then we have measured actually body temperature on the y-axis. So if you come to this place, if you double click on this line and you come to this place, there's a place that says, let me just go back again. There's a place that says chart element, add chart element. There you can select that, and then it gives you to label the X or Y axis. Now we want the Y axis, you can select this one. Okay, it gives us the option to put text here. We want body temperature. Yeah, so we have body temperature here. Now, if you just stop here, body temperature, it doesn't tell us anything, especially if you're in the United States. We are measuring temperature here in Fahrenheit. In Europe, we are measuring in centigrade. So for that reason, you need to take into consideration these two extremities. And therefore, we need to say that this we have measured in degrees centigrade. Okay, we need to put the symbol for degree. And here we can come under insert. There's a place where you have symbol here. You select that, and then it should come out that I think because I already did it recently. So it's here. You double click on this. It put the degree centigrade there, the degree there. I put my centigrade now. So anybody that is looking at this when I say body temperature is already informed that this measurement is in degrees centigrade. Okay. So the next thing I just cleaning up things. Now I can I want this to start maybe at 32 as I have it and end at 39. And then basically what I need to do here is to come to this axis options here and just say I want it to start minimum 32, maximum 39. Again, why this may be very trigger thing for many of you, especially maybe those that are at PhD level. A lot of those people at undergraduate level, master's level, or maybe PhD students do not know these things, and nobody taught them. And that's one of the reasons why we're having those problems we have in those African journals, right? So you can clean this up now. It looks a little bit good, and I think we're getting very close, but we still have some additional things to add. We need the error bars, and we need to change the color. That's a matter of choice. You can even choose to leave the color as it is. But there's something else I want to have a line here on the y-axis. So I can select that, and then I come to this place. There's a line. I say and this automatic, and then select the line that I want, make it black, and automatically now we should have a nice looking line here. So this figure now, as you can see, looks good. Right. The next thing I want to take out this border that I don't like here. Okay, I select that, and again I say border, no line. That is gone. Okay. So this now looks a little better. Then the next thing that I want to include is the error bar, or I want to include the error bars. Now I can click on this and then go back again to chart design. There's a add chart element. There's a place that says error bars, and then you go to standard deviation because you calculate the standard deviation. Now, when we've done that, you can select this, and if you click on it, it will bring this automatically for you, and then you can go to custom and then specify value. And we just have to select all of this information here for each of those rows. For the positive error value, for the negative value error value, we do also the same thing. We select again all of that. That allows you to plot a range between the highest and the lowest for each of the bars. And then we say, okay, here. And then this looks good. Maybe you just want to now make these lines a little thicker, because that's what I did here. Then increase the thickness of that to like 1.5 or so. That looks good. At this level, we have exactly the same information we have here, except as a matter of choice, you might want to play with the color, say you want to use something, because this black line here is a little then hard to read, to see. So that's why I went to something that is a little brighter. So that's also simple. You just click on these bars, and then you come to this place. It says fill, and you select this, and then you just select that. And we have exactly the same figure. Maybe you just want to make it a little bit lean, and we have exactly the same figure that we have here. So this is how you can go about in preparing your figures. What is interesting about what I have just done now is that when you are writing the code, for example, with R, you are not doing anything different. It's the same way you are saying fill, when we go to fill, if you look at this place, you have fill, you have line, you have, all of these options, parameters that you need to define. The only difference between this and what you're doing with R is that instead of you to click fill, and there's something will come out for you, and then you just go and select it. You are writing the code to tell it to fill. So there is no difference. That is why I think actually what I've done today is really the best starting point for anybody who really wants to appreciate how to make a good figure. Because if you understand this and you go on to write codes in R to prepare to plot graphs for you, when they say fill, because they are using the same language, fill, color, when they say fill, you will immediately understand from Excel how this whole thing works. And so the principle is pretty much the same. It's just that in the case of R, you have to write code. Okay, let us come back to the slide. Assume that we have finished this now. We have copied this, and then we are putting it in our PowerPoint. Then our result is ready. And what you want to do, I'm going to project this into a bigger screen, permit me. Okay, or maybe before that, I'm sorry, I'm going to show you one thing. Before that, what you need to do now is to maybe, make sure that the alignment is okay, everything is in the same shape. So alignment, I talked about when I was showing this particular figure, if you remember. But basically what you just need to do is to come to this place, and you can now place, I think it's easy for me, maybe I just scatter this a little bit so that it will be easy for you to see what is going on. So I can now select these two things, and I want them to be in the same line, in the same plane, and then I come to align, and I say, align middle. Then it places them in the same level, and then I can just drag that and place in the middle of my slide like this. So this and this now are almost in the same, you can even see that line, they're almost on the same line. So the figures become organized and easy to read. And if you do this for your bachelor, if you did this for your bachelor's thesis, I'm telling you that you will not have lost marks where you got B and C, for those of you who may have fought that a little bit. If you did this for your seminar presentation, you will not have lost marks. If you did this for a PhD, you will not have lost marks. But what is painful is that nobody told you what to do, right? And so people had to fight them for themselves and do what they want to do. Everybody continues in that process, and there's never an improvement. So I hope that today you will learn, and I hope that today you will share with somebody, and that we will never again plot those kind of figures that I showed you earlier on in journals. All right, let me just move on to presentation aspect. When you want to give a presentation, the goal is to inform your audience and to make them happy, to engage them, right? So I'm just going to run pretty quickly because this is more like test some of the things you need to keep in mind. First of all, you want to know your audience, right? So if necessary, contact the people that, if, for example, you get an invitation for an interview, contact the people that invited you and ask them how many people will be in the room. Because some people are shy to talk when there are much people. Some people are very, I personally, 1 million people in the hall, I'll be very happy, right? Some people maybe not. So we have personality differences, and understand yourself. So if you are the person that wants to speak in a small hall and you don't find out, and you get to that place and you now see that there's a crowd, you become intimidated. And so you begin to falter. So ask and try to understand what the size of your audience and their level of expertise. I know that my sister is online, so I'm not going to use excessive jargon. I'm keeping things simple because I know she's not in the medical line, so to say, right? So understand the format that you want. Are you going to use an oral? Is it a poster? Or is this thesis is actually a presentation? People don't understand that. Journal article writing is a presentation because you are telling people, explaining things to people based on the data that you have. So understand what format you are using. And I'm just dumping this test on you guys. I'm sorry, but there are certain things I'm just going to go to the next slide. Each of them I have a slide for them, so I'm going to just move through. Now, know your audience. As I mentioned, the level of knowledge of your audience are not the same, even if they're in the same discipline. My level of knowledge is not necessarily the same with that of Opai, even as medical laboratory scientist, because he's a microbiologist, I'm a clinical chemist, and then by extension, he has a PhD, I have a PhD, but I have a PhD in cancer biology, he has a PhD in microbiology, right? So the specialization is different. So the mere fact that you're talking to PhD holders doesn't mean that everybody will have equal level of understanding of what you're saying. So taking that into account. And then if you're a small audience, you have room to explain things. Consider that some people may have eye problems, and I'm going to give you why you should take that into consideration. Do not do this to people. You come to presentation, you show them a slide and figure that is so small that it's impossible for anybody, even with the binoculars, to see it. Do not do this to them. Show them a figure that is much more bigger, but you can see that this doesn't make a lot of sense because I'm seeing percentage, but I don't know percentage of what. So make the figure complete by now adding these additional pieces so that people can see, oh, now this 21% is out of 197 responders. If you even want to go further, as I mentioned earlier on, then tell them the actual number that is part of that this 21.8% consisting of. Because again, you don't want their audience to go and begin to do the calculation and be distracted. And that actually then leads me to this other slide. Now, if you are presenting as a thesis or a poster, include sufficient information, use more tests. Here you have, for example, figure 1, and you go on and tell people that this is educational level of participants based on sign-up sheets. So tell them how you got the data collected over 1 week, so that people will know that this was not collected over a year, because that will make them to also realize how much important or how much other people found this presentation useful. So give specific information. The same is true if you are doing a thesis. Now, if you are giving a presentation, it's exactly the same information, but I don't need to include all these tests anymore. Use less tests, explain more, because I am here with you. If you have a question, you can ask me and I can explain it to you. Then there's no point for me to put all the tests in this slide. That was one of the mistakes I made as a PhD student. If you go from Nigeria to Europe and you go to give presentation, you make all manner of mistakes because that environment and the way they do things is completely different. And one of the mistakes I was making initially is either that I have too many tests or I have too many figures on my slide. People become overwhelmed, and my presentation most of the times people will not understand it. So I changed a lot over the last 10 years or so to be able to get to where I am now in terms of what I know the presentation should be. Stick to the time that is allocated. If you are given, I don't know, 15 minutes to do a presentation, you want to make that presentation within 15 minutes, and you want to make sure you don't go more than 15 slides for 15 minutes. On average, you want to budget just 1 minute per slide. If you have to have, for example, I budgeted that I have like 60 minutes or so to give this presentation. Then what I even did is to go I have about 30 slides, and then I budget to speak like 2 minutes per slide. Okay, so that's what you want to do, right? So as the rule of the thumb, 1 minute, 1 slide, not more. Avoid having 2 minute slides. It's a common mistake I made, as I mentioned before. A lot of people make this mistake, and they begin to have problems in their presentation at master's level or PhD when they go abroad. Show the most important data. Don't show all your mistakes and problems. Everybody knows that your presentation, your compilation of data will have some problems. You don't need to show all of them. I'm not saying hide errors. What I'm saying is highlight the most important data. And even if you want to highlight a negative data or something mistake you made, highlight the most important negative data that helps you to then highlight the most important positive data. So it's an art. And then the next one is, remember that if you don't stick to time, you somehow annoy people. Some people want to leave early. For example, this presentation is to last to 6:30 Nigerian time. Some people want to leave exactly at that time, right? And so if you continue to present, then some people will become unhappy, right? And remember that some people may want to present after you. Assuming that this is a seminar presentation, it will be after me, someone else will come. If I bite into the next person's time, the next person bites into the next person's time, you see that maybe the last person will not present. And if it's in Nigeria setting, maybe tomorrow, when the person is coming, they'll not say the generator is broken. Then it takes 2 weeks to fix that. And that person is not going to be happy with you. So stick to the time. Avoid distractions. This is one of the most important factors that I really want to highlight when people present their data, because your information can be lost if you are distracted or if you're distracted people. Number one, acronyms. For example, UNICEF is an example of an acronym, abbreviation, WHO, DNA, define them, write them in full. Remember, again, not everybody has the same level of expertise and can immediately understand these things. That's number one. Number two, if I start going to Google what is UNICEF, I pick my phone, and in that process, I now have a message or 2 messages and I choose to reply them. That process has constituted a distraction. So you have distracted your audience without you knowing it. Now, what happens is that, and most of those professors are assessing you in your seminars or PhD defense or master's defense, and they are distracted, they're flipping through their phone, and then they raise their head, and then they are supposed to evaluate you. Clarity, they score you less. But it was because they themselves, they were distracted, but by extension, you caused it. Right. So do not distract them so that they will get your message clearly and not score you low for that. Avoid things that will disrupt your flow. Put your phone on silent. Avoid unnecessary gestures. And I like here, for example, sort out your left hand. A lot of people are presenting a right-handed and they're presenting with their right hand. The question is, what do you do with your left hand? Some people say put it in your pocket. Some people say, put it at the back. Some people just put it down. I have seen people doing presentation that are inserting their left hand, especially the guys here, they have very long hair, they're inserting their left hand in their hair. So the ladies that are using their hand that is to sort of turn their hair while they're giving the presentation. So you distract the people. People leave the slide and begin to look at you. So avoid this kind of gestures. In fact, I've even seen people putting their hand in their clothes like this while they're giving presentation. You should not be doing this kind of a thing. All right. Now, avoid using multiple texts because this creates confusion. You see, for example, here, if you looked at my presentation, all of my titles were bold and of the same size, and the texts are smaller. That is what you should do. Use bold in text, use bold occasionally just to highlight some key points. Next, don't go more than 4 colors per slide if possible. There are people who have difficulties with colors, color blindness, and don't use colors like yellow because these colors are really difficult to see for your audience. Engage your audience, make eye contact with them, and use animation as I'm using now. These things are coming one by one. Moderate gestures, I mentioned that before. Then you can digress, you can say something that may be not necessarily relevant to the presentation, but switch back immediately, very quickly, so that you don't lose their audience. Make people laugh if it is necessary to drive home your point, and then include a descriptive title. I'm just going to show that in a bit. For example, here, we can show and we can say that majority of these seminar participants are graduates. It's a statement of fact because that is what our data show us, right? We see undergraduates is a small fraction here. Everyone else is at least a graduate. So therefore, use that kind of title to drive home your message. So that if somebody is not looking at their figure or doesn't want to sit down and begin to distill all of these percentages, what they all mean, they can just take the key message and will be able to, maybe if they want clarification, ask you during question and answer section. All right, engaging the audience. I'm just getting towards the end, so be patient. Engaging the audience, for example, this lady here does a very, very good job, well-dressed. She's using her left hand to show, explain things. Everybody's literally engaged, and her right hand is down. As I mentioned, there are some people recommend you put it in your pocket. Some people would say just put it down. So she's well. This is a very good example of engaging audience. Then another one is this guy here. He has total control of the room. It leads with his left hand. Again, sorting out that left hand, using his right hand to explain things, and the audience are almost literally all looking just on that slide. So you get everybody's attention, and they enjoy your presentation. And then the last part of it, or the last part of it, is to prepare several times, before your presentation, to read for errors, and be sure your computer is in good shape. Don't just get to that place and then realize that your battery is dead. Oh, your charger is not working. Oh no, who are we going to take this charger from? And then those things become an issue. Copy and save your presentation in multiple storage devices. We have this problem even here, even where we have electricity and everything. Some of us encounter this problem from time to time. So if you're in Nigeria, I can even imagine that you have 10 times more likelihood of having this problem. and you really have to prepare for it. One of the ways to prepare for it is to arrive on time. I can tell you, if you're the one giving the presentation and you have not arrived in the venue 30 minutes earlier, you are actually late, because you need enough time to plug your presentation. You need enough time to confirm that it's working. You need enough time to acclimatize in the room, especially if it's a place you have not been to. If it's a job interview, you want to be really comfortable in that environment before the presentation starts. Otherwise, you trigger panic signal within you. All right, be comfortable in the room. I mentioned that if the room is hot, ask that they should open the windows. If it is cold, for us that are here, tell them to turn on the heater. But you really want to be prepared, psychologically for this presentation. Right. The last bit of this is acknowledge contributors. Again, collaboration is something that is lacking in our place. We don't acknowledge people, and then that is a problem. So if you acknowledge people, they feel happy, they feel engaged, they are willing to share data with you. Of course, so if you are interviewing for a job, keep in mind when you are speaking on the stage, people are watching you and trying to find all manner of indices to determine whether they think you're a good person or a bad person, whether you're somebody that will work with them easily or somebody that will not work with them easily. And so something like missing acknowledgement slide can give a very, very bad impression of you. So I'm not going to read through the conclusion, but some of the key points I've already mentioned before. It's all about making sure you have the right strategy to gather your data and making sure that you engage your audience really well. So I think on that basis, I want to just thank everybody for participating today. I feel like this is really, even if it's 2 persons, 3 persons that learn and implement this today, this can change someone's perspective and the way you do your research and you compare your research forever. And for that reason, I'm very, very happy that we were able to make this to happen. And I can encourage people to join us on Telegram. And also you can also contact me directly if you want to ask questions or so. But frankly speaking, I really believe there's so much for us to learn, and there's a commitment to make that happen. And I look forward to engaging with all of you going forward. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zeribe, for that catchy presentation, which encompassed both the theory and the practical aspects, and also highlighting some common errors we make in data presentation, especially in the presentation aspect. If your graph or how you presented your data is confusing, the audience loses interest and you might just be talking to yourself. Why so many people will use that time to go for a break because they can't understand the type of data you're presenting. So the way we analyze them, the way we prepare them, and also the way we present them is very, very important to pass the actual message in which we intend to pass across while preparing such data. So just one key thing I wanted to mention before we go into questions and answers. Remember, if you're doing a research, even before your data collection period, it is very, very necessary you consider the type of statistical tools you'll be using to analyze them, the type of, is it one-way ANOVA you'll be using? Is it regression modeling? Is it correlation? There are so many ways. Think about those before you start your data collection, because you want to get a data that will give you that final outcome, and not going to the field, collecting the data, and you discover it's not useful for the end product. And also, I know one thing we do most times is you start a research project, you want to be the statistician, you want to be everything because you want your name to be on the paper. Research is about collaboration. Please talk to statisticians, collaborate with them. They will be able to guide you on the best way to analyze your data, even before your proposal or your ethics is approved, before you go to the fields. That collaboration is very, very useful. It will give you an insight on the type of data you've generated and the best package or statistical tool to use to analyze them.